billboard sign and the signage for for this client are two completely different uses. So it even if they did want to advertise on that sign up there, people generally aren't looking up there to say, "Oh, there's the business down there." They're looking down lower street level at the billboard sign is something that they're looking as they're coming off the interstate or up the road, from the south. So they serve a little bit different purposes. So that's why we're trying to solve the problem for this one there.
So we appreciate your coming forward with this information. I think we just have to put it on the agenda for next meeting. I'm sorry about the time frame thing, but what would be the process?
So you can talk about whatever you want to talk about. You just couldn't, if something requires a public hearing or whatever, you just couldn't make a decision without it being noticed.
Okay.
You can certainly talk about whatever you want.
Okay. So does anybody have any comments? Brooks, you got your finger on the button. You got something?
Well, I was just going to go back to what I thought we were going to discuss tonight, which was those I-90 Plaza situations, and we've discussed that in some fashion before, and I just feel like if we're going to look at something there, that I would be more inclined to look favorably on what's the terminology, the layover district concept for that. So it isn't directly speaking to what these gentlemen are talking about, but I think there's a way that could be workable for some of the things we have talked about recently regarding that.
Speaking as a public, not as a commissioner, we need to stop scaring away business. This town does it all the time. They scare away homeowners. That's all we ever do in this town. We have so many rules to protect everybody, and I understand that. But we need tax revenue in this town. We can't do nothing. Aspen Park, can't build nothing there. Road, that's coming up to a vote. Guess what? There's no money there. Something needs to be done to get businesses here. Houses don't cut it.
I agree with that. I think as Brandon grows and we want to get more businesses, that the sign thing's going to keep coming back. So I would agree with like the overlay district, just so then, certain areas like I-90, the main through where all the bigger businesses are, I think we do need to add something for some signage for them. That way we aren't scaring everybody away and they're able to come in because they can put a sign there.
So
Because
Sioux
it
Falls has
goes-
2 interstates. They don't have exceptions for the interstate. Their ordinance is in alignment with ours. Max of 200, height of 30, same as ours. They have tons of businesses.
So our office is
They
at
have
Lake.
tons of businesses because they have the population. It's easy to go there. They have the people.
Right.
No
but
one comes from Sioux Falls to Brandon to shop. I go to Sioux Falls to shop. I'd love to stay here and shop, but we don't have everything.
I don't think that's a signage issue. My point, I don't disagree. All I'm saying is our ordinance is very similar to Sioux Falls right now.
It's not though. Sioux Falls treats billboards as off-premise signage.
I'm not talking about billboards, I'm talking about signage.
So our office is at Lake Lorraine,
Right.
and we
Sioux
have
Falls-
more than
Sioux Falls
200.
does have specific billboard signage.
Our office is at Lake Lorraine, and we have more than 200 square feet of signage for the retailers along the interstate. So to dispel that, yes, there are special exceptions. When you have retailers that are bringing in significant sales tax revenue to a community, the community does make exceptions. When I did the Casey's General Stores deal on the I-29 exit going into T, a condition of that deal was Casey's needed a taller, bigger sign than the ordinance allowed. The community of T said, we want that sales tax revenue. Not only because it's good for our community, but it also brings in people from outside our community spending money here, which is a dream. I guess I would say you look up along, so getting to more the highway interstate signage issue, you look at Worthington, Adrian, Laverne, Sioux Falls, Hartford, Beersford, T. Every single one of those interstate exits has larger signs than you're talking about. And every single one of those cases made special exceptions to draw people in off of that road next to you that has 20, 40, 60,000 cars a day to spend money. There is nothing wrong with bringing in sales tax revenue to a community from outside that community. Because that's what pays for your roads and your storm water, sanitary sewer, all these things that a city needs money for. You need that sales tax revenue. There's people in this room whose salaries are paid for with sales tax revenue. You have two people standing up in front of you who are trying their hardest to bring new businesses to your community. And we are passionately asking for help.
What, you
So-
mentioned the Casey's at, would you say Harrisburg?
T
T,
exit.
T, okay, so if it was against our ordinance, what did they do to make it okay?
They made an exception. It was a variance.
It was a
We're talking,
variance.
we're talking many different things here, and you're flipping things around a lot, and you're taking a lot of our time. But my point is, these are variances that you're talking about. These aren't ordinances. These are variances.
Patrick offered up variances as a solution to this problem.
I said you could certainly apply for a variance. Whether they would grant it is up to them. I cannot speak to how they will vote. But that is an option that is available in the zoning code.
Right. The other option is when you if you do an overlay district, which that's one of the considerations that you're doing for your interstate signage, is to do an overlay district for this and capture this, and so this one can continue to move forward, because this business is all about, after those really big signs that you're talking about bringing in, that, you know, they're going to come get new tires and gas. They're going to buy additional services when they come in. They see the sign at street level. So this isn't an 80-foot tall sign place. This is services, you know, that are going to be used locally and regionally as people come in off the interstate. So it is part of the discussion in that sense, that these are possible solutions. A variance is a possible solution. A change in the ordinance language is a possible solution.
Conditional use, maybe?
A conditional use, that one hadn't come up, the overlay district, but that's, you know, the reason that we're standing here tonight is because the city noticed this because of what you're doing they're looking at across the street with the overlay district. They said, yeah, we're out looking around trying to survey this situation to advise you for your discussion. They said, oh, you're not in compliance. That's why we're here. So, and then quickly realize it, you know, this is the most important one, this one here that we're talking about and looking at it on the screen, but it applies. So you know, not asking for anything new, we're asking for what's allowed in general business. That's what we just need. You know, we got a couple billboards out there that are there, not a new billboard.
So I think 7 of us sitting here are not going to be able to hash this out. I think what we need to do is have our professional staff make a recommendation to us as to how to handle this. Or is there somebody here that has an idea? Because I think we've discussed this long enough. We get your point. We understand it. We don't want to scare business away. We also have to look at the whole town, yeah, not just one particular item. So what would you folks like to do? You are the commission. I am just council.
So I've heard a lot of commentary about what we should do. I can't put words in these people's mouths, how to put an application together. I can't put words in the rest of this group's mouth. But in my mind, I would be willing to accept a conditional use to allow these two gentlemen to put signs up for their businesses on the condition that they will not re-sign the billboard lease. But they haven't come to us with that. They want to have their cake and eat it too. They want to keep the billboard plus put up another sign. They haven't come to us with the creative idea of, we want to put up a sign, we'll be willing to give up leasing this sign and the income that it brings to this parcel.
Okay, so that's your opinion, Brian. I don't know what the opinion of the rest of the commission is.
Under our current ordinance, they wouldn't be able to do a second sign with a conditional use, it'd be a variance, right? Or can they do a second sign with a conditional use?
Currently, no. We would have to amend the code to allow the conditional use avenue.
But either way, all I'm saying is currently, the option would be variance, and we could look at if there's a hardship. The problem is that we don't look at signs as internal or external signs, they're just signs. So I can't speak to how that conversation would go, but I think a variance would be the avenue that's probably the most available for you. Is that either a variance or an overlay? Is that kind of where you're looking at what their options would be?
So, kind of the outline of the memo is, this is a potential issue. The first step for you is determining, is it an issue you want to address and solve? If so, there are a couple of avenues to do it, and it's a policy decision which of those avenues you want to go down. Whether it's we write in something so it can be, they can apply for more signage by a conditional use permit, and you all could set the terms of that conditional use permit. It's, if you want to go down the variance route, that's written into the ordinance already. Whether it would get the result they want is a decision to be made at that hearing. That's an avenue. It's, you could adopt an overlay district, you could adopt an entirely new commercial highway district with its own set of uses and setbacks and sign standards and parking standards and all that fun stuff. The overlay, if you're looking to address one topic, maybe that's the more preferred way. Instead of a whole district, just touch one thing and stack it on the underlying district. It kind of depends what you want to do.
So what's
I'll
the
write what you
negative
want,
of,
but-
what's the negative of treating billboards separately than your on-premise signage? Like, what's the negative of changing the ordinance back to what I believe it used to be that way? What would the negative repercussions
I'm the only
be
one
of
that
that?
up here that was sitting here when we did when we addressed the billboard and the content issue and all of that. We basically don't want billboards in Brandon.
But that doesn't answer the
But
question.
But we want to allow them, we do want to allow them on the interstate, okay? And that's why we allow them more opportunity in light and heavy industrial in those areas. So, but we have a lot of existing billboards that we can't tell them to tear them down,
Right.
okay? So the ordinance is very restrictive when it comes to billboards. That it's almost to the point where nobody's going to put up a billboard in the future in Brandon.
But if you discern the difference, why can't that still be restrictive?
So we did it in a fashion where we restricted the signage. And basically, like I mentioned earlier, ours matches what is in Sioux Falls.
It doesn't though.
30 feet and 200 square feet.
But in Sioux Falls, a billboard does not count towards the numbers you
I
just
understand that.
stated.
I understand that. We're not talking about,
You just said you have the same sign ordinance as Sioux Falls and you do not.
we have the same sign ordinance. Now, we don't have a billboard ordinance. Billboards are signs,
But Sioux Falls does not treat them as signs.
and that's
What,
fine.
what do they treat them as?
It's off-premise signage. So they have very restrictive rules, which is why you can't just go put a billboard
I
up wherever you want.
remember when we were talking about, and I remember talking about on-premise and off-premise signage, so I don't know if I was here when we did that or not, but I remember talking about that. And one of the things we said was like, at the end of Main Street up here, the VFW has a sign. Well, that's off-premise, right? And then I remember Patrick saying that the law says we cannot, govern signs depending on what they say. So that means on premise and off premise doesn't count anymore because, say, like the VFW sign isn't, there's one at the VFW, but there's one at the end of the Main Street where Main and Holly are by the gas station. And so that's an off premise signage, but we can't differentiate between on premise and off premise because then we'd have to look at what it says.
I don't know that that's true, because every other community I've done retail deals in,
That
treats them
surprises me,
differently.
because if the law says we can't do it, then it surprises me that, like Sioux Falls, which you'd think would be big enough to know.
It's not just Sioux Falls. It's all these surrounding towns
Well,
treat them
okay,
differently.
but Sioux Falls
So
is the biggest one. They're the one that can afford the.
I think if
their
you
own,
got a legal opinion, they might find something
So
different.
I don't know if we have to check on what the law is to make sure that we're interpreting it correctly, or, and then, then I would call other towns and say, there's this thing.
We are interpreting it in the most conservative way you can.
Yeah.
Whether there's some leeway there, other towns may be slow to adopt the change.
Yeah,
I mean, nothing's illegal until you get sued over it. You can't-
well, yeah.
So to
Nothing's
answer your
crime
question,
unless it's
Ryan,
unpunished.
our approach was property owners are allowed signage. Now, whether they want to advertise for themselves or for someone else, that's entirely up to them. And then we get away from on-premise, off-premise, billboard, whatever. And we just say, everybody can allow so much signage. What they want to do with it is up to the landowner. And if they wanna lease their sign to someone else, we don't wanna call it a billboard. We don't wanna label it as something. We just said, everybody gets X amount of signage, and it can be X height, and that matches Sioux Falls.
So when this
But what we
billboard was
didn't
put
want,
here,
what we didn't want is a bunch of new billboards coming in. And I think everybody in this room probably agrees with that.
what's stopping the industrial property next to this one from putting a billboard up? I'm not aware of anything in the current ordinance that
Or the mini storage on Holly across the street from
So in LI and HI, we allow in excess of 200.
right. So why couldn't that next property?
How much is it actually?
Well, part of that is since we're talking about this one property, that relatively recently was an industrial property, and it was changed by the owner.
Do you want me to
So that
rezone
was-
it back to industrial?
Well, the property owner can request any rezone they want. I don't know how that would go, but so this in part was created by that rezone request by the property owner.
Absolutely, and nobody knew, I mean, as of September, we're getting letters that the signage was fine up until last week. So there's no advisement, the whole thing was set up to do this whole thing until this overlay district came last week, right? So there was no known issue, and it's been under heavy discussion for months.
I mean, we have it in writing from the city that a sign is allowed as of a few months ago. And I appreciate Patrick and Tammy calling saying, hey, this is coming up, you should come in on Thursday. So I guess I appreciate being asked to be here. In the case with this billboard broken out on the screen, I don't know that it's fair to say that this property owner wants to have their cake and eat it too, because there was a pylon sign on this property when that billboard went on there. And had that property owner been told that you could never have a replacement pylon for a new first-class business that wants to come in here, they would have never done the billboard.
Well,
So I'm not trying to make a case for billboards. I'm trying to not be against new businesses coming into town, and we just need to figure out a way to either amend or work through the ordinance to find a solution.
Was, so yeah, they couldn't have been told that because I believe at that time it was a different zone, and so this, what applies today didn't apply at the time when that
What's the
sign was probably, when it was probably put up originally.
288.
So we
Roughly
zoned
280.
it out of compliance. We zoned it into an out of compliance.
This says 243.
Or still zoned it in out of
Was-
compliance.
So if a sign was, I mean, if a billboard was permitted at 243 square feet, I'm just going off of what the city provided here. I'm not, and that on top of an already existing pylon sign there. And all this predates me. I'm just going off of what the city provided here. But as the ordinance changes, I get that. But you have to, when you have redevelopments or repurposing of a property, sometimes that has to be taken into account.
Okay, let's do this. Is there a couple of people on the commission that are willing to sit down with Tammy and Patrick and try to come up with a solution to this? We're just chasing our tails now, so let's move on.
I'm not sure how much discussion we can have outside of a meeting as far as,
As long as there's not a quorum, you can,
I didn't know.
right? Am I correct?
Correct.
Yeah. But I think we need 2 people to work on this rather than 7. It just doesn't work. Committee, you know how committees are. I've never wanted to be a co-chair because it just doesn't work. Would that be something that we could do, folks? I'm looking for suggestions here. You've all have served longer on this than I have.
I don't know if we want to rewrite our ordinance. I think this is a variance type of an issue.
Well, I wasn't saying that we rewrite the ordinance. I was saying to come up with an option that we could move forward on. And a variance might be the option. Rather than,
It seems like anything else discussed here would be a change to the code or the zoning ordinance, I guess, technically. That the one thing that exists at the moment is probably a variance request. Because even allowing a conditional use is something we'd have to write into the code to allow that process to be established. And yes, there are also other things we could consider, but all those would be code changes. We'd have to go through that process, so.
Rob, you want to work on it? Somebody else?
You can, you just have to meet the threshold of finding a hardship. That's something topography or something about the land that's not of the applicant's making, you'd have to meet the threshold to issue the variance.
Is the owner of this property now selling the property to, they're keeping it?
Yes.
Okay.
Would you consider not being able to develop and lease a property for a retail tenant a hardship? I feel like they're kind of stuck because
When
I
we,
think we'd agree that any user that we could imagine that wants to be there is going to need signage. And to me, that would be a hardship. And you look across the street, look at what McDonald's has. I'm guessing the signage that McDonald's has today never met any code, that some variance or special exception was made. Same for the coffee cup, multiple signs, bigger and taller. I have to guess that there was a variance or some, I mean, that doesn't fit into any past sign code that I'm aware of in Brandon. So I mean, I think it's fair to say anyone who wants to come and go to this property that's going to create sales tax revenue, that is what we want, is going to require signage.
Well, what do we do with the issue if we rezoned and the billboard's out of compliance? Is that our hook? We didn't catch that.
That's an existing condition, but they can't.
So we've had our site plan our plans in since December 13th for approval, and they've had the billboard on there, the city signage on there, and the pylon sign on there the whole time. Can we approve that and you know, that's, I don't know what a sign permit is, but we've been showing this signage since December, since we've been waiting for our permit since, you know, mid-December here. Is that, Tammy's shaking, no, I don't know what a signage permit is, but, it's been in the city, or is it something around that? Can we, you know, I don't know what the purpose of showing it on the sign, or the site plan is, I don't know, but, I don't know, that's usually part of the review process too, is with the signage, so.
Can you guys sit down and work out something on this? I mean, with a couple of the commissioners? We're not gonna get it solved tonight.
Whoever wants to work on it, we're here.
Yeah.
8 to 5, 5 days a week.
And real quick before we're done, so we, you know, as you guys all know, we just rezoned this property a few months ago from heavy industrial. Because my understanding is, you know, the city, for the use, it was gonna be for retail use. It made sense to rezone it to, you know, we were told to rezone it to general business, which we did. Would we have been better off to just kept it heavy industrial? I mean, does it solve the problem if we just rezone it back to heavy industrial? I know that seems counterintuitive, but if that checks the boxes to make it happen.
I'm not gonna speak for staff, but my recollection of the thing was, I would doubt, without speaking for them, that the property owner was told to rezone it to anything. They requested that rezone. And in fact, there were some that were pretty strongly opposed to it. It did pass and it was rezoned, but,
We were
so that
advised to
was-
rezone it by city.
there was some discussion, so yeah, I don't know. There probably were more uses available in that option, but yeah.
Well, let us see what we can do.
Okay.
Okay? So Rob has volunteered to work on it, and who else would like to? Mike? Okay. If you guys can get in contact with Tammy and Patrick sooner rather than later, and let's see if there's a way to work around this. No
Okay.
promises. I appreciate your both coming here and spending time and advising us that this is an issue. And as you can tell, not everyone is in agreement on some
Yeah.
of these things, so there's no guarantee that if something is brought forward that it's going to pass, just so you know. But, we'll do our best.
So the chamber says to me that they're in favor of trying to figure out solutions to bring businesses to town. Do you have any objection to the chamber having a voice in your committee when you meet? Can they be a part of that? Would that be okay? Okay. Thank you. I appreciate all your time.
Yeah, and chamber people are welcome to come to any planning and zoning meeting and speak on any item or, on anything they want to talk about at the public, what do we call that at the beginning of the meeting? Public comment, yeah, you bet.
Okay, so this whole, signage thing on I-90 Plaza, which is,
I'm sorry, I interrupted.
well, I'm just wondering what we want to do with that. Put it on the agenda for next time. I don't
So
know how
there is
fast
a
that is
variance
coming.
request
Okay.
from a business out there on the next agenda.
So
I
we
would
can
caution
discuss
you
it
against
then.
talking too much about it.
Well, let's talk about it next meeting. I think everybody's pretty much wore out.
Okay, can I say one
yeah.
thing on it? I also would be kind of in favor of the overlay district if a lot of the other stuff would be the same as general business, like the setbacks and the parking. If a lot of that would be the same, I don't see any reason to duplicate it into a new zoning, but the overlays could work.
You have been sitting out there for eons. Come on up. Come on up, Dana. Sorry about that. If you just give us your name and address, please.
Damon Coughlin, 8610 East Sunset Circle, Brandon. So I'm here on behalf of Oak Ridge and Mike and Robin Coughlin. Things are changing out there. And right now, that entire property of Oak Ridge, their house and everything is all one plat, one piece of property. And we're looking at dividing that out, because my brother in the Air Force is coming back and wants to purchase their house. In doing that, my parents would also like to, I guess the main part about this is plot off a section of it for a small house, if you will, for them to live in when they sell the main house off to my brother. Cause they're at that age where they can still do that, and, they wanna be able to do that, and eventually maybe he'd have the option of buying that for a shed, stuff like that on there. So what I'm here more for is to kind of get recommendations, because nothing has been done yet, before we have someone come in and engineer plat it, and I'll start working out that, so we can get, what are you looking for? Because it's kind of open, so we can do whatever we want right now. We're not stuck by anything, to kind of make some of this work.
So it is zoned general business. Generally, a dwelling standalone would not be allowed. There is one in connection with a business on the same lot. Their plans tentatively involve adding a second dwelling to that lot as well as another business, and then would they plat off lots and how the setbacks would work between the buildings and access points, and that's everything they're trying to figure out, just to how to make it function, because it's kind of a multi-use deal. So is it a planned development? Is it, how do you see it as their best approach is kind of what he's interested in.
And regardless, I would say we're separating the house from the nursery anyway, because he can't afford and doesn't want to buy the nursery. He just wants to buy the house in that. I think I blocked off there about a 3-acre parcel.
And I suppose you're here representing them because they're in the south, right?
They're in Florida.
Yeah, yeah.
Complained to me when
Yeah.
I was up at the farm
Yeah.
on Monday that it was cold down there
Yeah,
at 65.
Yeah, I'm feeling
was minus
really
20 where I was at ice
sorry,
fishing.
sorry for them.
So tentatively, you're talking about potentially 3 parcels where there's one now is kind of what you're discussing. One
Yes.
that's still gonna be a business, and 2 that would be residential.
Yes,
And
in
if
the
you
long,
wanted to have 2 businesses, would you separate them off potentially?
so our plan right now is we're trying to get it worked through where we're actually planning on relocating the nursery and landscaping from that site to the field that's to the southwest, which is in the county anyway. So we're working on that, getting that figured out, getting same thing, highway access, all kinds of stuff done there. So the existing site, long range plans, possibly turning it into an event center or something like that. So those are the long range plans. The nursery part of it hopefully would happen within the next 2 years.
So would you bring that field into the city?
Possibly eventually, yes. We would probably try to build our facility first under the county laws and stuff like that, and then opt to annex into the city.
So if I understand this correctly, you want to separate the existing house into the larger triangular shaped piece?
Yep.
And then separate off an additional parcel where the X is on page 60, correct?
Yes.
And access to those 2 parcels then would be a mutual access?
Yep.
Basically along the old roadbed.
The old roadbed going to Sioux, which I've seen the highway plans, and depending on what they end up doing with that, that could end up as a cul-de-sac down by the school there and not connect up to the highway. I know there's a lot of moving parts on that section of road out there.
So you're just looking for some guidance?
Yep,
At
before
this
we
point.
get
Too
cost
far
involved
in, yeah,
and all
too
that
far in the
stuff.
weeds?
Yep.
Okay.
That's good that you're thinking about those things, because that's the first thing that I thought of too, is your challenge is gonna be how to ensure the access to those properties, because like you said, there could be a lot of changes there, and we have to, of course, treat them so that even if the ownership is maybe not the same, but it's related people, whatever, you know.
Yep.
There could be a time in the future when each is owned by distinctly different individuals, so it has to be capable of supporting that.
Yep, access for right now, we would plan on going the old Sioux Boulevard down to where the elementary school is with the curve.
I'm not sure what all would happen, but that common line between, basically where the old road was. Since part of that's county and part of that's city, how does that work in terms of, does that cause any issues with access agreements?
I would have to defer to Tammy. I don't know if she's.
I mean,
Yeah.
right now they own both sides of the road, so permission from either one is permission from themselves. So the only spot where it would be split is once we get to that fence line, and that last little section to the north, half of it's owned by the school. But I do believe all of that road, I don't think there's an easement in there anymore. I think it was all abandoned. The only utility easements that I know of is power, and there's rural water lines running down that.
Here's my only thought from a future standpoint is when I see people put two houses on a lot that you want to be okay with it not being a prime for two houses. I mean,
Sure.
Somebody's not going to look at that and be like, oh, that's a excellent house, and I'm right next to somebody else, and but it can work too. If they're building a house and your brother may long term want to buy it, and then it's one property or one owner, that could be okay. It's kind of, I don't know.
It's kind of similar to the farmstead where the parents have the
Yep.
old house and they move in and take care of it, and the kids or whatever build another house next to it. I know in talking with the county planning people, they are changing their ordinance as far as density settings. They're going to go through that this summer and change a lot of that, so this type of thing is more allowable than it has been in the past, because more and more people are asking for it. I think that was in the fall that we talked to them, and they kind of gave us a heads up that that was starting to happen in the county.
More eligibilities, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
And just to clarify, currently we don't allow houses in Brandon. Maybe under a PD would be the possibility, but nothing under residential now is houses in Brandon.
That was another question I had.
A house is a house.
Right, well,
Right.
but the
It's gotta follow.
garage, I mean, currently we have.
It'd just be a bigger garage is what you're saying.
About 1 square foot.
Yeah,
It
that's
could
what
be
I'm saying.
house.
That's a
Right
house.
now, it's the opposite. The habitable house has to be 1 square foot larger than a garage.
I think on the plans that he has with that too, I don't know if you got that up there, but it should be pretty close to where still the living area is going to be about the same, if not a little bit bigger than the garage space.
You'd have a foundation and everything.
Oh, yeah.
right?
Yep.
So
Yep.
it would be
It's not real clear on our drawing here, because the scan didn't read real well. So the garage appears to be on the east side of the house, is that?
So there'd be a garage on the east side facing south, and then there would be a bigger building on the north side of it.
So a garage on the north and a garage on the east?
Southeast corner.
Yeah. So is the driveway access
To the.
to
if
the
you look at-
south? Or is
Yes, to the south on the one, because the other garage or bigger part to the north would actually be, my brother would use that because the existing house really doesn't have much of a garage.
And how would that be accessed?
From the old Sioux Boulevard there, the old roadway that's right there.
So you'd have a driveway to the west and a driveway to the south?
Yes.
Patrick, when you're looking at this, what are you calling the front as far as like setbacks and stuff?
So the front would be based off wherever the access easement would be. That would be the front, and then the rear would be the opposite, and the sides would be what's left. So that would depend on how it fleshes out.
I think I mean, obviously, like I said, there's none of it's done right now, so we can adjust it how we need to. Right now, I think he's got the front considered facing south towards the concrete driveway, and then the sides east and west, and the back to the north there.
It really, to me, I don't see any problem doing this. I'm just trying to look down the road. It sounds like you guys have some plans already, what you want to do.
Yep.
In that county portion of your property to the west there. Are you looking to have access from Sioux Boulevard?
Not for our business.
Or not
For
a-
Oak
none-
Ridge, we would
none
try
of
to get access off the high, we want highway access, just
For-
for the retail end of it. And,
Well, you've got that already. Up
on
by
the
the-
existing building, but where we want to move further to the south,
Oh, okay.
I don't quite yet. Working on it.
I guess what I'm wondering is if you ever want to keep access off that, off the old road coming from the north
Mhm.
into that area of what that would mean for this future house.
Well, the existing house would already uses that, and that's their access too. So that access point would pretty much always have to be there.
So maybe it's easier if I point. You go to page 59.
Yep. Mhm. That one, I'm not sure yet. We don't have plans for that. That stuff, so that area on the north there is stuff Mike wants to keep for right now. My brother maybe wants to do like a pumpkin picking type farm as he retires from the Air Force. All of our stuff that we want is more that to the north, and where that line comes off there would kind of be our main road off the highway. And those one buildings that are right there would disappear. Those would be gone when we moved out. They're just hoop house plastic greenhouses, so we'd take those out.
Any other thoughts for Damon?
I'm curious how this ever became a business with the house and the nursery.
We've been there for 46 years now,
Has it
so
been that
way
long?
before. It's been 46
Has it?
years.
Okay.
Yep. Yes.
So.
Yep.
Okay.
Is this, like, how soon are you going to start working on this?
They would like to start as soon as possible.
Okay.
My brother's moving back in June,
Oh,
so a little behind the ball on it, but
Well, the reason I say that is this board is current now, so, 2 years from now it could be different, but if you're gonna go now, then,
sooner than later, as
Yeah.
soon as possible.
Okay.
Obviously, the plating and it has to be divided out before they can purchase the house, so that has to. I'm trying to get things rolling a little bit sooner before they get back, because I know these things take time.
so what is staff's position on this? Or do you have a position?
If we can make it work, the issue with the plating, of course, any lot created has to meet standards, so a residential lot would have to meet the requirements, and then you run into a whole issue of now you're creating residential districts that aren't necessarily, is that the spot zone concern? Is it a PD? It's how we want to slice it, but generally, I mean, we're generally in favor. If people want to do things legally, then they should be able to have some freedom with how they want to use their land.
And the thing that I heard come up is we may have to address those chows, how do you say it? Chows at some point?
There's more and more of them. They're
Yeah.
becoming pretty
Yeah.
popular.
We may have to address that in our code.
Good thing we're talking about residential broadly. If that's something you want to revisit as well, then
Well,
here we go.
Okay, don't chase everybody off of the commission.
we've kind of talked a little bit about tiny houses before, so is this is kind of the same sort of thing?
Well, my concern would be with a house, a lot of times a house is a shop house, so you have a big garage and a small house, and
Don't say that in front of Glenn.
I think they're great in the country. The concern would be, what are we trying to do in residential? I mean, do you need a 2,000 square foot garage attached to a 800 square foot house? Now, granted, for a lot of people, I grew up in the country, so the things I want to do, I'm restrained by ordinance, and that's okay.
Okay, let's cut that discussion off for right now. Let's move on.
Or if you built a mother-in-law apartment onto the existing house.
Let's
That'd
not go there.
Yeah.
Let's not go there. Let's get Damon taken care of here.
Damon,
That can come up later.
so one comment that somebody can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think this was said before, but just so you probably already know this, but the square footage requirement is the footprint. So like if you had a small house with 2 levels, the 2 levels square footage can't be 1 foot bigger than the garage. It has to be the footprint, I believe. Okay.
Okay, so like he's got a loft and one of that loft would not count. So that'd be the concern there on that is it's not, without that, even though it's partial living space up there, it might not, living area might not be bigger than the garage area.
Yeah, we've historically not counted a second story.
If you can get a car that can, yeah, but generally, I think they go by footprint, so.
I'm missing something here. So you only take the ground floor square footage and compare that against the garage?
Yes, sir.
But if you pick, now, so I have a ranch house, but there's a basement that, that's a finished. So if you're gonna say, okay, we won't go by footprint, we'll go by square footage of the living area, it's a 3-story house, So would that also count if you have a 1-story house with a finished basement? You'd have to count that then too, wouldn't you not?
No, ma'am, we wouldn't count the lower level finished space.
What I'm saying is, like a 2-story, I understand, but this is single story. Just use as an example because it's here.
Sure.
Single story, and then there is living over here. That's not on top of the other living. It's living by itself over here, above a garage. So it's still, to me, how I look at it is, it's part of the foundation as a whole because it's not stacking on top of another living. The living's by itself. It'd be like putting a. Because there's a lot of 2-stories that'll have living above a garage. That's not part of the main structure, I guess you want to say.
But then you could have
I'm just-
1,000 square foot house and a 2,000 square foot garage with 1,000 square foot above it. And so that's just not how I look at it.
Okay, so does Damon know what he's supposed to know? Because we're gonna get into this discussion at a different point, not make him stand up there. So, he knows? Did you tell, he knows?
Do you feel you have some direction?
I think so.
A concept plan,
Yeah.
fleshing out direction.
So you're 25-foot setback front, 7 on the sides. And how about for the back? So that north side. Now it's, I guess you.
It would depend on what it is zoned, would determine the setbacks.
But a normal residential is 25, 25, 7, and 7.
And then he needs to make sure which side is the frontage? If you're saying, are you saying
That's
the old,
off, your primary frontage would be whatever the access easement would be, but if it is a lot that would have both an access easement frontage and Highway 11 frontage, it would be a double frontage. Your primary would just be how you access it.
and this one wouldn't have Highway 11,
No,
it would back up to the existing house, but is his frontage off of the old road, or is it off of the shared driveway? to
cause it's
the
all
Current house.
private land, it doesn't abut any street. So I don't know how that throws into it too. It's landlocked in the center of all private land, so there are no public roads or access.
Cause isn't your front yard the side of the property that the address is?
Typically,
That's
it's where
called the
it's where
front.
your property faces the street. Or if there's an access easement, it would be the access easement. It's how you access your property.
Cause the post office is gonna give you an address. Is it Split Rock? Is it?
I don't know
Sioux?
what that would be, cause right now the nursery and the house are both the same address.
But this one isn't accessed from the same place those are. This is accessed differently.
Yes and no. I mean, the house, that driveway comes off the back from that, and this new house would also come off this shared driveway. But again, none of them butt up to a public street or really frontage on that one.
And the
So
current
it's
lot
different.
goes to both Sioux and Split Rock, but this one won't
Correct.
to either.
Right.
So you might have to rename that street like Coughlin Drive or something like that, and then, but that's just for, you're gonna wanna figure out where your front is before you get too deep in the weeds, otherwise.
Yep.
But, and then, figure out your square footage off of the footprint. But other than that, I think I proceed with caution a little bit on just knowing that you're right next to another property, and that's gonna change things down the road on, but you're aware of that, but that's my only further caution.
I would say work closely with staff. Thank you for your patience
Yep.
tonight. Appreciate it. Does anybody have anything else for him at this point? Okay. Thanks, Damon. All right. Do we have any more business for the good of the cause?
That's all we have for you.
Gee, thanks. Okay, so I would ask Rob and Mike, you guys, staff, reach out to them and see what you can come up with on that signage issue. And I'll ask for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Heidrich second.
Okay, motion to adjourn, all in favor? Opposed? Who would oppose adjourning? I don't think anybody.
We are adjourned at 8:56 p.m.